I would say just always expect the unexpected. A typical day at work really isn't typical at all. Peggy Wright, MLA, Edmonton, Beverly-Clareview. Oh, that's a very good question because I was always involved in the NDP, but always in the background. And then it was really the healthcare and the education issues that really propelled me forward. I was a teacher for 24 years, and I had seen what had happened in education, the lack of supports, the lack of resources, the lack of people, the lack of funding that was really required to make sure that each child that I was teaching, we had all the necessary materials so that they could really be their very best self and their very best learner. That too is an interesting question. I've often called myself an NDP baby, and this is because my parents were both involved in the Young CCF in the late 1950s. They met, their very first date was a Young CCF club. So I really couldn't have been anything other than the NDP. They probably would have disowned me. Yeah, but honestly, it's about social justice. It's about making sure there's equity. It's about making sure there's fairness. It's about making sure that healthcare is a right, education is a right, that people have what they need, and that there's equity throughout. MLAs do a number of things. I look at the job as really a job that's in three parts. The first part and the most important part is the constituency end of things. It's where you're out in the community, you're out meeting folks, talking with them. They're telling you what their major concerns are. But also in the constituency part, we do have an opportunity to help people out as well. We can do some referrals for them. We can help them with things like AFH and that sort of thing. But in addition to that, there's also the legislative part where we debate bills. We might do member statements. We might have questions for question period. And then on top of all of that, because we are all NDP MLAs, there's also the NDP part, and there's the party part, and making sure that the party stays strong as well. A typical day at work really isn't typical at all. I can't speak to any kind of typical day because they aren't at all typical. If we're in the legislature, I could be meeting with stakeholders, and then I could be practicing a question, and then we will have a caucus meeting, and then off we go to the legislature, and I might be reading that question and hoping for some answers out of the government as well. If I'm here in the constituency, I could be doing some similar things, meeting with constituents. We could have some folks who come in because they need some assistance on that day. There could be much paperwork that I have to do because it's my responsibility to also run the office. So it really does run the gamut. But honestly, the very best part of all of it is staying in touch with the 40-ish thousand folks who live here in Edmonton, Beverly-Clareview. The two things I like, probably the thing that really tops the list is just really, and it's an honor to be able to do it. It's that part of my job where I can take someone's story into the legislature. And I can tell their story, not just to a group of 15 or 20 people, but to all Albertans. I had the honor of telling a really important healthcare story a number of months ago, told another healthcare story about a month ago, and it is an honor because I'm doing it on behalf of the constituents that I represent, and it's an honor, and I'm very grateful to be able to do that sort of advocacy for them. Okay, number two would probably be just the fact that I get to do this job, period. It's about people's stories, but it's also just about the opportunity to represent them and to represent where they are, to advocate on their behalf, to make sure that life ends up being better rather than kind of going the opposite way. Honestly, one thing I would like to change, and this will not come as a surprise to anyone, is because I'm a teacher, I really wish it was much more collaborative inside the legislature instead of as adversarial as it is. I would like to be able to ask a question and get an actual answer, or at least some semblance of an answer, because I'm asking those questions on behalf of people in Edmonton, Beverly-Clareview, or on behalf of workers, because I'm also the Shadow Minister of Labour. And it would be really, really lovely if I could get some of those questions answered. It would be lovely if I could work with ministers, and if instead of saying, no, I don't think I'm going to take any of your ideas, I wish that we could sit down and actually make things better for all Albertans. That's really what I wish. No regrets. However, there are certainly challenges. That family time that everybody talks about, even for an MLA who comes from the city in which the legislature lives, it's really, really hard to make sure that I have time for family and time for friends. That balancing act is a really, really difficult one. So it's not really a regret. It's really a challenge I continue to work on. The favorite moment of the legislature, honestly, is just it's walking up that big staircase, going into the chamber, because I'm still, even after 2 years, very much in awe of the fact that I get to do this job. It certainly was never a dream. You know, the dream was to be a teacher. But to be able to go into the legislature and do this work on behalf of so many really fabulous, terrific people here in Edmonton, Beverly-Clareview, is a gift. It's a gift and it's an honor. Oh, that's a very good question. Favorite public interaction. You know, it might have been, and I've got it. It was a community event in Belvedere. It was a summer event, kind of like I think it might have been Community League Day, but there were a group of folks who were new Canadians, and they were, first of all, very excited to be here, but they had some really good questions. And just having the chance on a lovely, summerish day in fall to talk with them about not only their experiences but about their hopes and that sort of thing. That was really, really that was a very sweet moment for me because it kind of, put everything into perspective. The reason that we're all here. Oh, one piece of advice. I would say just always expect the unexpected. You never know what that day will bring. That's the first thing. But I think the other thing I would say to folks is that, you really need to know kind of who you are at your core, what your values are, what it is you stand for, because that will inform the messages that you bring not only to the people in your constituency, but to any stakeholders you might work with, and to all those questions and all those member statements that you get to do in the House. It really is important to stay true to yourself as you do this. Oh, the 10-year vision for my writing. That's a fabulous question. No one's ever asked me that before. I would like us to see at least that we have access to a new high school because the kids in this area have got opportunities, but only one of them is kind of sort of close to the communities of Edmonton, Beverly, and Clareview. So more schools would be good. I would also really like to see more homes for a whole bunch of different people. We need affordable homes. We need near market homes. We need market homes. We need it all. I also happen to think we could do with a few cooperatives as well. We've had 200,000 people come into Alberta over the last 2 years, and many of those folks have landed in Northeast Edmonton, and it's a right to have a home. And I'd like for all those folks to have a home that they can actually afford, so that they can actually have a life.